Hi everyone, I think we're going to make a start now, so thank you so much, Angela. So welcome to What Keeps Us Well, the first of what will be a series of webinars presented by South West Your Voice. I'm Liana Davis, Health and Equalities Lead in the Learning Disability and Autism Programme, NHS England South West. As always, and as Angela's been saying, please do keep yourself on mute throughout the webinar, as background noise can be quite distracting while people are presenting. There should be, hopefully, there'll be a chance for some question and answer session at the end, so please do keep any hands up until then. This webinar will be recorded, and the recording will be sent around afterwards with the details of where it will be available on Futures and also on the Inclusion Gloucestershire website. So now I will pass over to Rosie and Sammy from South West Your Voice with their fantastic presentation, What Keeps Us Well. And thank you all so much for joining. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Rosie. I'm just going to share the presentation now.
And I'm Sammy. And we will introduce ourselves a bit more in a minute. But first of all, I'd like to introduce Your Voice. We're a neurodiverse network of self-advocates from across the Southwest. Our neurodiverse network meetings provide a safe space for autistic people who don't have a learning disability, but also may be neurodivergent in other ways, to share experiences and discuss the issues important to them.
So I'm Rosie and I'm the Your Voice project coordinator. So I'm really sort of excited about making a change through self-advocacy in the Southwest. So I was diagnosed as autistic at the age of 17, and I've undertaken extensive research into autism in women and girls. And I would consider myself to be an autism advocate. So in my spare time, I would say I'm autistic. I've got a fine art degree, and I love to paint and cuddle my two cats, Simba and Duchess.
So I'm Sammy. I'm the autistic project worker. I also am autistic with a learning disability and partially sighted. My job is to help with some of the admin of the project, but I also chair and facilitate the autistic network meetings. I make sure that the autistic voice is heard, and when we're talking to the NHS, and in my spare time, I like cons, sport, music, and Western shows. Leon and Angela have done some of this, but just to reiterate some of the housekeeping, we do want everybody to feel comfortable. So if you could keep yourself muted, and you can have your cameras on or off. As Liana said, we should have a dedicated Q&A at the end. Feel free to put those questions in the chat. And the chat will be monitored by the members of the NHS that are here today.
So what helps sort of keep us well is the title for today's webinar. So we wanted to talk to you a little bit about executive function. And so this is a term used quite a lot when talking sort of about autistic people. So autistic function is executive function are mental skills that allow us to manage every aspect of our day-to-day lives. So they allow you to manage day-to-day tasks, get things done on time, and stay safe. So studies suggest that 80% of autistic people struggle with their executive function. So this means that they may struggle with what is deemed to be simple tasks in neurotypicals. So how might someone with autism struggle with executive function? So Sammy and I sort of spoke a lot about this, and we got some feedback from our network members. So an autistic people might struggle with sort of prioritizing, keeping to task, focusing, time management, self-monitoring, and understanding different points of view. And Yeah, Sammy, do you want to explain a little bit about routine?
Yep. So the routine is important for an autistic person to offer and recommend, and it's often recommended as a strategy for them to cope by the NHS. Although for autistic people may thrive on a routine, it can be hard for them to implement that plan themselves and create that structure. It can help have everybody else talk through your plan and routine and work together to create it. Having somebody else to help you prioritize tasks can also be helpful, and it can remove the overwhelming feeling of stress.
So we have a voice clip here from one of our network members explaining sort of their experience of routine and how sort of routine impacts them as an autistic person. So again, that was the voice of one of our network members, and it's really sort of beneficial to hear their viewpoints on that, because a lot of the time, sort of the autistic viewpoint is different to sort of what is recommended. So what sort of helps autistic people then? So we always think it's sort of important for autistic people to make themselves a priority. So to use strategies to sort of help their executive function problems. So for instance, visual aids. So these can be things like calendars, lists, plans, timetables. It's to create that structure to know what is going to happen when and with who. So it can help to break things down sort of step by step. So for instance, create a plan for the day with hours and times of what they need to get done. Also sort of communication. So written communication after a meeting can help processing. So this can also sort of be in health appointments. So written communication after a GP appointment or a mental health appointment can really help the autistic sort of individual process what's happening. So one-to-ones to make sure the autistic person is understood. So that double checking can really sort of help processing rather than leave it sort of juggling around the brain. Again, breaking down instructions into steps. So step one, do that in priority order as well. So extra time and patience. So set aside more time than needed for the task to be completed, so it doesn't feel overwhelming. And sort of don't work on a high energy task if you're running low on energy and spoons. I think this is sort of a key point here, because when working on a high energy task, when you don't have a lot of energy already, can lead to an autistic person feeling even more overwhelmed and stressed. And again, asking other people for support. So an example of sort of helping with executive function would be when working with a colleague who is autistic to sort of write down a plan of action based on what you have discussed in the meeting. And it's really this can be helpful to sort of do in bullet points and in priority order with timescales.
So this came from one of our members about how it feels as an autistic person to think. We've called it the cup of coffee analogy. Many people underestimate the energy and effort it takes for autistic people to function. And one of our members used the cup of coffee analogy to explain the process of making coffee shows the difference between the autistic and neurotypical brain in your everyday tasks. For neurotypical people, you may not think about what it takes to complete the process of making a cup of coffee or the energy required. They pour the coffee into their cup and it's done. For autistic people, it's quite often I need to get a clean cup, I need to put the kettle on, I need to wait for the kettle, pour the kettle, the milk, the sugar, stir the coffee. And sometimes even make it what seems like a small task is just too big and too much energy is needed. It can be overwhelming. So yeah, how much thought do you put into making a cup of coffee? Yeah. So so one of the ways that we can overcome this is energy accounting, and for many neurodiverse people, one of the ways we keep well is some form of energy accounting. Some daily tasks take up a lot of energy to complete, and this could be because they cause more stress or anxiety to an autistic person, and there will be things that can give energy. Resting and engaging in something that is going to give you some form of autistic joy are two of the best ways to recover. So what is energy accounting? Most energy accounting uses some measurement of each task throughout. Most energy accounting uses a way of measuring each task in a unit of energy. And the most common, it's already been mentioned, is spoons. Autistic people find this a good way of making sure that they can keep some sort of balance in their day-to-day lives. Energy accounting can help an autistic person plan for when that life is busy or challenging, when energy levels will be lower. So here we have the activity recovery cycle. You can see that that just daily activity drains some of a neurodiverse person's energy. We very easily get overwhelmed, and the battery gets lower and lower until we come into an exhaustion and burnout, and then the recovery and rest. People's expectations from other people and then not understanding can cause issues for recovery spoons. So here we go. Here's a very simple way of thinking about it. This is just a task of every day getting ready, even just getting up and getting ready for work can cost a spoon. Traveling to work because you're around other people and you're already starting to mask is another few spoons. Being at work because of the social environment and the demands of the day can be a number of spoons. And then by the time you get home and you have to do all the other work, it's of keeping your house tidy and cooking for yourself. You're using up your spoons all the time. And then you have but you can recover those spoons sometimes. There's a number of ways you can do that: rest and sleep and peace. quiet time, and that may look different to an autistic person than it does to a neurotypical. And time outside's always good, but again, it depends where it is and what that environment does. And then hobbies and things that bring the autistic joy. It's important to note that recovery spoons often give less energy back than the costing spoons. A lot of autistic people can feel overwhelmed by the process of what is deemed to be a simple everyday task. And this costs more spoons and can be exhausting.
So autistic joy, I think Sammy mentioned in the previous slide about sort of like autistic joy can bring back that energy and bring back those spoons that are sort of used in energy accounting. So with autistic joy, acceptance from others is really important, and having people embrace your autistic joy can increase the autistic person's happiness. And it's great to see sort of other people sharing that happiness as well. And autistic joy is represented as an intense feeling of excitement and joy that many autistic people experience. So it encompasses the mind and the body. So many autistic people show their autistic joy through stimming. And autistic joy is sort of really important to what keeps autistic people well. So it allows the autistic person to recover and gain energy from things that they find difficult or draining. And it's a time where they can truly be themselves without masking. So examples of autistic joy. So we've included these different examples here to sort of move away from the stereotypes, because autistic joy can mean lots of different things. So sort of strong interests and hobbies. So the passion and happiness this brings is very important for autistic people. So spending time with people or animals who are important or special to you. So building an experience connection, and that connection is really important. So socializing with other neurodiverse people, that sort of feeling of acceptance and belonging is really important as well. And sort of different sensory experiences, so listening to your favorite music, spending time in nature. So these things can sort of bring intense feelings of happiness and excitement, and autistic joy should be embraced. So Sammy and I have included our stories of autistic joy. So this is mine. So autism is sort of remarkable to me in the sense that it enables me to feel joy through my selected interests. It's sort of a feeling like I can't quite explain. Throughout my childhood, I went through different selected phases, and the latest, once upon a time. When I'm anxious, I spend time flicking through eBay or Vinted to check out the latest Once merchandise. Now I have a huge collection of Once Upon a Time merchandise and the Little Mermaid figurines, and I have it on display in my room, and it makes me incredibly happy. So I re-watch the series every day to the point where I know each and every word of every episode, and this gives me a huge sense of calm. So the predictability is reassuring and nurturing. I just want to say here that sometimes this interest has been misunderstood, and sort of people don't understand how can you watch the same thing every day. But to me, that predictability and that sense of knowing what's going to happen is really important, and I feel like it sort of should be embraced. And ever since I was little, I've sort of expressed myself when I was excited through the raising of my hands and sort of a little grimace. I didn't know that back then, but now it's what you would call stimming. So it feels like sort of electricity running through my body. And to be able to have that feeling and experience that joy is sort of a feeling like no other. And sort of sharing that joy with family and friends and having that acceptance from others is also incredibly special. So here you can see sort of pictures of me with meeting some of the Once Upon a Time cast and my collection of things, really, merchandise. But it helps me sort of regulate my emotions, which I think is a key point here.
So, like Rosie, my Autistic Joy is very important to me. I probably am going to stim now. So my joy is almost more than a joy. It's a physical feeling that calms and excites my whole body. At secondary school, my head teacher used my special interest in football to engage me in the curriculum, and it's one of the things that really turned my schooling around for me, and that's why I wanted to put that there. But for the last 20 years, my overwhelming and overriding interest has been in Torchwood, the Doctor Who spin-off, especially the characters of Captain Jack Harkness and Yanto Jones, and the actors that play those characters. Many believe that Yanto is autistic, including the actor that played him. So when watching a programme and when it was first broadcast and seeing something of me appear on screen meant so much to me. I'll watch the series so many times, even to the point where I know the storylines better than the actors. Torchwood helps made me make friends too, something that I've struggled with throughout my whole life. During lockdown, I became a part of a group of online friends who had shared that love for Torchwood. I also write fanfics as a way of processing some of my emotions. And it's encouraged me to step outside my comfort zone. I started going to conventions just to meet Gareth David Lloyd and now John Barrowman. And that's meant that I've also been able to attend events at work that I up until a few years ago refused to go to. So like Rosie, I've got a couple of pictures, my squishy pictures as I call them, with both John and Gareth there. Gareth particularly, that's a very special moment for me. That second picture down is from a site called AO3. That's one of my fanfics that I spend so much time on. Even at work, I surround myself with Torchwood stuff. That's my desk, my drinks bottle and my mug, and my little John Barrowman photo magnet. And yeah, there's the two best friends at the bottom there.
Thank you, Sammy. So you sort of heard from us how sort of autistic joy is so fundamental in our lives, to create that emotional regulation and that sort of well-being of what keeps us well. But you'll sort of be sad to hear that there is stigma surrounding it. And although autistic joy can be beneficial to autistic people's well-being, there is sort of stigma around it. That means, like, sometimes autistic people cannot feel the benefits of it, which for us is really sad. So the word obsession is often used by medical professionals and the diagnostic teams when describing a person's autistic joy. So example, I think, like when doing sort of the ADOS assessment, they are writing there, the person is obsessed with The Little Mermaid or obsessed with Once Upon a Time, rather than using positive terminology, such as autistic joy. So the word sort of obsession has sort of really negative connotations, and the autistic people are sort of really sort of moved away from this and rejected sort of the word obsession, because of its links to sort of mental health conditions and OCD. And it doesn't sort of embrace sort of the positivity that surrounds autistic joy and the happiness that autistic people get out of it. So because of sort of this stigma, autistic people sometimes feel like they have to suppress their autistic joy because of this, which leads them to feel trapped, which in turn sort of leads to mental health problems. So this is a quote from one of our network members, which says, if you want to improve autistic people's mental health and well-being, find what makes them happy, joyful and gleeful. And we would sort of recommend this as sort of all health professionals, as a way to sort of communicate with autistic people, find what makes them happy. And often that's sort of a good way in.
So, as I mentioned, and as Rosie said, spending time with other autistic or neurodiverse people is also a great recovery. So peer support is one of the most important things. Anybody finds friendship and a sense of community. For many neurodiverse people, socializing with neurotypicals can be exhausting, as they're not aware of some of the social codes, and masking can drain huge energy chunks. However, spending time with other neurodiverse people can have a recovery effect, because of the feelings of acceptance, of belonging, and a sense of community and understanding. And neurodiverse people can understand other neurodiverse people in a way a neurotypical may struggle with. I'm not going to read these quotes. These came from two of our network members again. Just how important it was for them to be part of the network. I'll let you read those for a couple of minutes. If you've read them, shall we move on, Rosie?
Yeah.
So, sorry. Sleep. You'd think sleep is a really important thing in terms of recovery, and it is. But it's very common for neurodiverse people to struggle with sleep. There's a difficulty at recognizing your own body cues and when you should sleep. Not recognizing those signals can be very complex. Neurotypical people might struggle to understand and provide strategies for this. It's common for neurodiverse people to find the implementation of their own routine, and even getting up at a certain time, and find it hard. And they might find that autistic sleep patterns are really irregular. So, for instance, one night this week, I have had 2 hours sleep. Last night, I had 5. It's so irregular, and you have to measure that. Autistic people find that irregular sleep patterns can affect the next day. And this can cause fluctuating energy levels. So if you normally start with 10, 11, 20 spoons, if you've only had 2 hours sleep, you've already lost 5, which makes it hard to maintain. Tiredness may lead to burnout, and which means you need naps during the day to recover. And also this means that a neurodiverse person may not have time or the energy to engage in their autistic joy activities. And that little graphic is just sometimes what it's like, trying to go to sleep. And then you start over stimulating yourself of, why can't I sleep? And I'm just going to be so tired tomorrow. And yeah.
So this is the voice of one of our network members on their sort of experience of sleep, which sort of reinforces some of the points that Sammy mentioned. So that's the voice of one of our network members on their experience of sleep. So sensory sort of stimuli then. So autistic people may sort of experience sort of sensory differences compared to neurotypicals, which you might be aware of. So autistic people may be under or oversensitive to lights, sounds, smells, or textures, and this can cause distress at times. So autistic people may benefit from quiet time when struggling with an overload of sensory information. So this can be equally hard to sort of relax and sleep. Some autistic people find they can only relax when engaging in another activity or their autistic joy. So we've got this graphic here. So what do you sort of do if your body is physically exhausted and you're trying to sleep at night or get some quiet time and rest, but your mind is on fire and you're thinking about all the processes from the day, sort of going over conversations? It can be sort of really difficult to unwind and process it all. But there are things that help. So sort of weighted blankets, a lot of people have these. There is a cat on that one also, which also helps. A dark space. So having that reduction of light and that sensory input can really sort of help to calm down. Sort of autistic joy. My autistic joy is painting and once upon a time. So time without talking, I think that's also really important as well. So time without that sensory input from others, where your brain can have that time to process what it needs to, and not have that expectation of responding to someone else, and that added input. So distraction, so things like sensory toys or sort of fidgeting with something or knitting when you're watching TV can also help unwind, and noise cancelling. So all autistic people sort of vary with their sensory needs. And so some autistic people may, for instance, love drumming and sort of like rock concerts, whereas another autistic person would find this to be sort of a major trigger and could lead to sort of sensory overload. So there are a lot of autistic people in the entertainment industry, and due to their sort of clever ability to mask, which sort of helps in their character roles, which is really interesting. So Sammy and I are going to share sort of some recommendations of sort of what we think sort of you can do to help. So the first one is sort of peer support and understanding is really important. So neurotypical people can also do this, and it's sort of embracing the autistic person for who they are. So we would sort of like to sort of ask you, what can you do to help with this?
So then it's important to embrace the differences, different skill sets and positivity, rather than concentrate on the deficit model and medicalising autistic person's personality.
Most autistic people thrive on routine, but they can struggle to implement this themselves. And it really helps to have a family member or a friend or someone to sort of break down what needs to be done in priority order, or to create a schedule with timescales for efficiency.
There are NHS recommendations to help with sleep, which are widely shared, but this might not be applicable for an autistic person. Many autistic people struggle with those NHS recommendations, and it doesn't work for them due to their variable and various needs. Understanding this is very important. Working in a personalised way to the individual's needs is key.
So many autistic people have specific things that bring them joy, and this joy is an overwhelming feeling of happiness, and it can help for a neurotypical person to relate to an autistic person through this, especially when in health appointments and in situations that cause anxiety. So when supporting an autistic person's well-being, we feel this is really sort of significant to improve their well-being and emotional regulation.
Autistic joy is an integral part of good well-being and mental health for an autistic person. It helps ground them. It helps ground the person, and it is an essential part of their day-to-day management and emotional regulation. Kind of think of it as sort of mindfulness for autistic people.
And sort of don't think of sort of well-being in neurotypical terms. Well-being is different for an autistic person, and the fundamentals of well-being are variable for an autistic person. And I think the key here is don't sort of use neurotypical standards to measure well-being for an autistic person, because this won't work and this won't help them.
So Angela's going to put some a Menti on the screen in a minute. So how are you going to use some of these things that we've talked about in your everyday practice? Our recommendations and anything you use in your practice are reasonable adjustments, and they can improve the quality of life and healthcare for autistic people.
So I'm going to stop sharing now, and Angela's going to share her screen on how to access the Menti.
Hi everyone. So in the chat, you'll notice that I've put a link. There's probably quite a few of you that are used to using Menti. You can either obviously do it on your computer, or sometimes it's easier just to do it on your mobile phone. And if you just go to menti.com, and then if you put that code in, then hopefully it will work. If for whatever reason it doesn't, then we're obviously very happy for you to put any comments you want in the chat as well. So I'll go ahead and share my screen now, and hopefully that works for everybody. Can you see that? Oh, brilliant. So we've already got some people adding their comments in there. So Rosie and Sammy, there's some, can you see the screen okay with the comments coming through?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
There's a question there of if you don't use the NHS recommendations about sleep, what should we do instead? Work with the person personally, understand their sleep patterns. Yeah, it's about the personalization. Yeah.
I'm seeing like here, like the main one that people are saying is to change sort of obsession to joy, or sort of rephrase that. And I think that's sort of really important, because the word obsession can feel really sort of stigmatizing, and negative. Personalizing sleep advice. Yeah.
I've just seen somebody say share the joy. Absolutely. I know. I get very excited even in the weeks coming up to a con, and I think there's probably somebody in the room that has shared many of my autistic joy moments through Twitter. You know who you are, and I know some of my colleagues just get joy out of seeing me and Rosie experience our joy. Yeah.
Angela, could you scroll down for us? Is that okay?
It's stopped working. It was doing it and then it stopped working for me. So I'm trying to get it to do it, but it won't do it. I'm going to try reset. No, I don't want to reset the results because I think that will make it blank. So I don't want to do that.
Does that little arrow work?
That just goes to the next slide, which is not it. So yeah, so I think that's not going to work. Let me just
I think there was a lot of people saying rephrase some of those negative languages into more positive, like obsession into joy and some of that. So yeah.
And I think I saw someone say about sort of sharing sort of the information with people, like what we said, after sort of diagnosis, to sort of help them with that journey, because diagnosis sort of is a journey, and it does sort of take a while to accept it and sort of learn who you are, and I feel that these points would sort of really sort of be professional, be helpful to sort of health professionals, but also the autistic person themselves. So I think we've got some time for questions now, don't we, Sammy?
Yeah, I already have two here. So they're sort of both related. So what are spoons? So spoons are, it came from the chronically ill community, but autistic people have adopted it. They're just a measurement of energy. So some people call them spoons, some people call them energy levels, battery life, and it just, and they will vary from people to person as well. So they are just a way of colloquially saying how much energy you have, because like I say, the process of even everyday tasks can take up units of energy, so they're just units of energy. Rosie, is there any way I could explain this better?
I don't think so. I think they are sort of what sort of autistic people can use in their heads to sort of acknowledge sort of how much energy it does take. I think what you said, and acknowledging that sort of the recovery spoons, or the activities that sort of can help recovery, sort of never give as much sort of energy that is expended. And it is sort of really difficult. I've seen another question here. Sort of, do you think people are always happy to be asked about their sources of autistic joy? And is it too private for some? I personally, being autistic, I don't think so. I think when using the word joy to ask, I don't think it's overstepping the mark. I think if you were to say, what is your obsession? However, I think that would be stigmatizing and stereotyping. So I would maybe ask, do you have any joy activities that help you to regulate your emotions, for example? I think that could be sort of a nice way of phrasing it. What do you think, Sammy?
And so this sort of came up in the network, and it was, you know, some people already feel like they are so internalized. They've been told so many times not to behave in an autistic way, or not understand that they're autistic at all, you know, especially with like diagnosed people. So I think you may get I don't know what my autistic joy is, or what, as a response. You may have to. Another common phrase is special interest, but the autistic community don't like that because it's becoming medicalised in the same way as obsession did. So I think a lot of people will acknowledge that they have something that gives them some kind of joy that they want to tell you about. And that's the other thing. A lot of autistic people will want to tell you about it because it's one of the ways they regulate is info dumping, and we have so much information in our heads. I know Yanto Jones better than Gareth David Lloyd knows Yanto Jones, and he played him. So. And I want to tell people this. And I'm sure you, Rosie, want to tell people about Once Upon a Time. And quite often, we will sit at our desks and go, touch wood, Once Upon a Time. You know, it's. So I think asking about it will often get a positive reaction anyway, with the provisos that some people may not have yet come to terms with the fact they do have it. Which does lead me on to the next question that I have, and that's, what is stimming? Stimming is the physical expression of that autistic feeling. You can do it when you're stressed or when you're happy. Quite often it's this flappy. That's a stereotypical thing, but I do it a lot. Rosie's smiling. I also do it when I'm stressed or I'm unhappy or I need some way of but yeah, and there's also, you know, you might see an autistic person spinning. That's a motion stim, or repeating words that sound familiar or feel familiar in their mouths. That's also a form of stimming. Yes.
Thank you, Sammy. I've got another question here. If someone has not been diagnosed with autism but present with autistic traits, would the information be supported to them? 100%. We have people in our network who self-identify as autistic, but haven't been able to get a diagnosis. And sort of the diagnostic waiting lists at the moment are really long, and it can be hard to get a diagnosis. And we sort of Your Voice acknowledges that sort of this can be sort of really hard, and so we sort of accept people that sort of do self-identify, and we think that is just as sort of important, and we would definitely sort of say that these sort of recommendations could help them as well.
And the peer support that being, if as a self-advocate, as a self-identifier, that you get from joining in with autistic neurodiverse people who may or may not have a diagnosis, as I said, is incredibly important. That whole sense of community and stuff. And so I have a question that leads on to that, which is how can we help people connect with the Your Voice community? We have a network meeting once a month, the first Thursday of every month, on the at 6 to 7:30 in the evening on Zoom. I'm sure Debbie or somebody can put our website or or you can contact me if Debbie can put my email in at sammyr@inclusion-plus.org, and I can get in touch with people and give them the information.
I've seen here someone said, do we have to use the phrase autistic joy? I feel it labels that person. I think autism or non-autism, we all have joys and interests. The only thing with this I would like to say is often autistic joy is so much more than just joy. And I think that should sort of be appreciated. It's that sort of balancing and that emotional regulation that it really helps with. And it often sort of means so much more to an autistic person than just joy. It's what helps them regulate their emotions, process their emotions, and cope with day-to-day tasks and those executive function struggles. So that's the only thing that I would say when just sort of saying we all have joys and interests, because it is so much more for an autistic person.
And we've discussed this a lot in the office of, oh, but everybody has hobbies, don't they? Yeah, yes, you do. Yes. Not to the extent that Autistic Joy and those special interests have over an autistic person. I'll give you an example. As I said earlier and it's something I'm still interested in, but when I was in my teens, my interest was football. I went to Wolverhampton Wanderers every home match with my dad. My dad would always say his hobby was Wolves, but he could turn that off, or it felt like he could turn that off. It became a thing when he went to a match or when he was doing something like going down the pub with his football friends. For me, I wanted to know everything. I wanted to know the Wolverhampton Wanderers history. I wanted to know how many goals, and I then wanted to tell people about it. And it's more than just that hobby. Like I said, my head teacher, when I was failing at school, used football as a way to engage me in the curriculum. And I came out of school with 4 C's and 4 D's, something I would never expect to get. And that, yeah, I don't think you can get those results with just saying we all have hobbies. Yeah, we do. But it's so entirely different. Sorry, I feel quite strongly, but yeah.
I'm just seeing whether there's sort of any other questions. People are asking sort of, will these sort of slides be shared? And yes, they will. They will. The recording from today will be accessible on the NHS Futures website, and it will also be on the Your Voice website. Someone has also asked whether there's an age limit to Your Voice, and whether it's strictly sort of Southwest. we're commissioned for the Southwest, and we have an age sort of limit of sort of 18 plus. But am I right in thinking, Sammy, that at Inclusion we actually have an autistic sort of youth forum?
Slightly differently, we have some autistic youth work for the for schools, and myself and another colleague go into schools and talk about what self-advocacy is, and how to set up a self-advocacy group. Yeah, so there is some for young people. But that's only in Gloucestershire.
I'm not sure if can you see any more questions in the chat, Rosie or Sammy? I think there's just a lot of thanks and how amazing the presentation's been, which it has been. It's been absolutely fantastic, and I think people are going to take this away of people who they're working with, colleagues, friends, family members, all, aren't they? So, and specifically around the Autistic Joy, there was lots of people at the start. I don't know whether you could see sort of sharing their own experiences on Autistic Joy, which was absolutely fantastic to see. And I just want to, I know Angela's written in the chat as well, it is recorded, it will be shared, there'll be an email round to everybody, and we can put some of the questions and answers in there as well, and hopefully the Menti too. Is there anything else from Rosie and Sammy at all? Don't want to cut us short, but also know there's quite a lot of people having to leave now, so.
I think that's it from us. Just a little note to say that this is a first in the sort of the series of webinars, and there will be sort of more webinars coming from Sammy and I on sort of neurodiversity in the coming months. So just keep your eye out for that. I'm sure Liana and Angela will share the details when that comes round.
Brilliant. Thank you both so much. Absolutely fantastic. And thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Well done, Rosie and Sammy. And we've got people leaving.
Thank you.
Oh, Millie, you've got your hand up. Would you like to ask a question?
Hi, sorry, I just wanted to wait to the end because I did ask a question, and I just really wanted to.
Oh, sorry, we missed it. Sorry.
No, it's fine. I just would have I really value Rosie and Sammy's opinion on this, and thank you so much. The presentation's been absolutely amazing. Thank you. I'm also a neurodivergent female as well, so it's very dear to my heart. One of the things I just put in the chat really quickly was that I'm actually a neurodevelopmental practitioner at CAMS based in Dorset. I'm quite new to the team, but I've been really promoting and advocating for neuroaffirming practice within our service, and we've actually implemented the neurodiversity passport within the service, and we're kind of pushing that as kind of a standard and across Pan Dorset. I just wanted to get your thoughts on whether you think having a document such as that captures all that data about, you know, a neurodivergent person's needs is actually something that should be a standard across, you know, all NHS trusts. I've personally found having that document has been really, you know, beneficial with the patients that I've worked with who are predominantly all neurodivergent. So I'd be really interested to gain your thoughts on that. Thank you.
I guess it's sort of, who would that document be shared with? Is it to use in sort of health appointments and sort of things like that, or is it for the person's own records?
It's more so it would be a case of it's transferable across other agencies as well, because often a lot of the comments that we get, and again, I'm sure this is something you can relate to, is a lot of the time we're having to repeat a lot of this information around their communication needs, what their sensory needs are, their preferences are, how they like to be, identified as, as an autistic person or a person with autism. It's got a collection of things that you can capture and make sure that you have adjustments in place for the appointment. So again, it's more of a case of preventing that individual having to repeat that same information and ensuring that we are promoting, access to healthcare and ensuring that their needs and adjustments are in place. So, to kind of, again, around thinking about health inequality and social determinant, how can we support this population to ensure that they have access to the healthcare, because a lot of that is, there's a lot of barriers that they've been faced with over the years.
And I've done a number of other projects with learning disabled people with learning disabilities, and they have the health passports, and autistic people don't. It is a very useful document, and I certainly have made my own version of that at colleges and at schools, sort of getting to know me, what you need to do to support me. I do think it's a helpful document. I think there are some provisos. I think it has to be co-produced. I think it absolutely needs to be done primarily by the person themselves. They know them, or the carers. They know themselves better than anybody. Yeah.
It's, I guess, finding a sort of system where that can sort of be shared across different sort of agencies of working within the NHS. And that always sort of gets sort of picked up and it's not buried in a person's notes. But I think in theory, I mean, it would be a great idea if you could walk into a health appointment, and then the health professional sort of already knows your sort of needs and requirements, and that's already laid out. I think in theory that would be amazing if we could all have that. I'm not sure on the logistics, but I definitely think the co-produced sort of way of working could be a really sort of good start on sort of asking autistic people what they want from their health appointment, and what sort of they would want to be asked in advance. And again, making it person-centered. That person-centered approach is really important because every autistic person is different.
Thank you so much. Sorry, I just really wanted to capture your thoughts, and I thought I'd just wait till the end because it kind of went up the list because everyone was saying thank you, and yeah, just echoing that. Thank you so much. And I think we're looking to do some work because we use Rio about having it attached to our front screen. So we were working with IT. So yeah, watch this space, see what happens, but it's really invaluable to get your insight. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Rosie.
Sorry, Millie, that I missed it. I feel like I had one job and I missed a question, so sorry about that. And
no, it's fine. And I'm an OT by background, and it all really resonated with me, everything you were saying, and it's so key. And I'm hoping, like you say, if you continue to do this and it's on a regular basis, I will definitely be joining each time. It's brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you.